morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is being dragged deeper and deeper into the abyss. Ever since Mnangagwa got into power, he has promised that he was going to revive the Zimbabwe economy. And yet all he has ever done is come up with one scheme after another whose primary objective is to secure his stay in power. That has been his focus and obsession. One of the latest versions of these schemes is these so-called presidential funds. Here is a video emphasizing some of these so-called presidential funds.
Nyika yeZimbabwe inyika ine nhoroondo yehondo yerusununguko. Ropa revakomana nevasikana rakabeuka kudzamara pfumo ravo ramutsa nyika yeZimbabwe. Hurumende yeZimbabwe yeSecond Republic iri kutungamirirwa naHis Excellency Dr. Emerson Mnangagwa vakaona zvakakodzera kutarisa nekusimudzira varwi vehondo yerusununguko vakauya nenyika. Ko makomrades ndimo mune yese kubudikidza nemutumwa wavo mupi wemazano munyaya dzekutsvagira nyika yeZimbabwe mabhizinesi nenyika dzekunze. His personal special advisor for investments, Dr. Tempter Paul Tungwarara, Nzou Nyamasvisva, vachishanda nevakuru vevarwi vehondo yerusununguko vari kumhanya nechirongwa chePresidential War Vet Fund, Presidential War Vet Borehole Drilling, Presidential War Vet Solar Scheme, Presidential War Vet Housing Scheme. Vechidiki varangarirwa.
Yes, it's an endless string of these presidential funds. Before that, of course, we had another version. Remember, the teachers for ED, nurses for ED, and we even had smugglers, in brackets, GoldMafia for ED. And there's always been, of course, the command agriculture, command vote, command this, command that. And then there's the less publicized looting and briberies. Talking of tender, and you can't forget people like Chivhayo and Tungwarara and Tagwireyi. And when you're talking about bribes, can't forget the MPs getting $40,000 housing allowance. Ministers, $230,000 housing allowance. Ministers, $500,000 housing allowance. Judges, $400,000 housing allowance just before the 2023 elections. All these schemes have three things in common. Number one, the nation's resources are being looted at a grand scale. That cannot be denied. Number two, the chief and primary beneficiary of all these schemes is Mnangagwa himself. When you're talking of nurses for ED, vendors for ED, GoldMafias, smugglers for ED, all these people were selling them. Their selling point was that they were going to help Mnangagwa stay in power. And as far as he was concerned, everything else they did was irrelevant. The most important thing is they are helping to stay in power. The third thing is the economy of the nation has been in total meltdown. And this has only made Mnangagwa even more desperate. His schemes have been even more reckless. And his resolve to silence all those who dissent has been more ruthless. Those are the three things that this whole scheme has in common. It is a pity that we keep going round and round in circles here. One is absolutely dumbfounded to see how some people are so gullible. Take, for instance, the war veterans. Zimbabwe has been independent for the last 45 years. Mnangagwa himself has been in power since 2017, so he's now clocking 8 years. Now, all of a sudden, he's coming up with schemes to build these 3-roomed brick houses for the war veterans. There's the money to give them, to buy them bicycles. Each one of them. And to drill a borehole at their homestead. One has got to say, so all this time, was he not aware that all these hundreds of thousands of war veterans were living in abject poverty? The truth of the matter is, all this activity was initiated by Blessed Geza, criticism of the regime in January. Mnangagwa had to move very quickly to pacify the war veterans. And so he came up with all these schemes. The other thing to be remembered here is, are the war veterans the only ones living in abject poverty? Over 50% of Zimbabwe's population is today living in abject poverty. They can't afford bicycles. They can't afford to build a decent homestead. They can't afford to have a borehole so that they could drink clean water. So they continue to live in these mud shacks. And those living in urban centers are not much better off themselves either. Most urban areas have been reduced to squalid housings where sewage is flowing on the open streets. But this is a regime that is determined to stay in power at all costs. And so they're coming up with all these schemes. And of course, yeah, if I was a war veteran, would I refuse to have the 3-roomed house built for me, a borehole drilled for me, and given a bicycle? Of course, I'll accept it. But how many of those war veterans who have accepted this also realize that this is a bribe? If they were to be suspected at all of being faithful to ZANU-PF, indeed, all those war veterans who dared come out in support of Blessed Geza, I'm sure they did not get any of these free handouts. And those who did, if they should ever be suspected of supporting people like Geza, they will find themselves in a situation where they are kicked out of those houses very quickly. This is the reality in Zimbabwe. The truth of the matter is, if the country was doing well, these war veterans, as well as all the other 50% of the population living in abject poverty, will be able to afford to buy these things for themselves. They would not need to have to rely on handouts. Indeed, if the rural people were given title deeds to the land, even before independence, many of the rural people in Zimbabwe today would have built for themselves decent homes, worked on that land to improve it, plant fruit trees, dig wells so that they've got clean drinking water. But they cannot do it if they don't have title deeds, because they know they will be moved from that piece of land at the behest of the ZANU-PF proxies. In the rural areas, these come in the form of the headmen or the chiefs, who are all but in name ZANU-PF political commissars. And then there is the war veterans, who have been ZANU-PF in all but name. And as long as these people do not have the confidence to improve, to build themselves a decent home and improve their living conditions, And that is undermined because ZANU-PF fears that if these people were to have ownership of the land, just like Ian Smith feared, the next thing they would want is political rights. And so the regime is deliberately keeping them poor for its own selfish political ends. Here is Margaret Longo, herself a war veteran, a liberation war heroine in her own right, and the former ZANU-PF MP who fell out with Mugabe and became an independent MP. Here she is speaking on why ZANU-PF is keeping the rural people in particular poor.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economically empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
That is the truth, and that is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. We are having all these schemes which are designed to keep Mnangagwa in power, undermining the ordinary people's right to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country, and dragging the nation deeper and deeper into the economic and political abyss. None of these presidential schemes are meant to benefit the people. They're meant to buy their silence or buy their vote, their continued support in the regime at their own expense. Zimbabwe is a failed state. And the primary reason for it is because the people of Zimbabwe have never had a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And all these presidential scheme, ED for this, teachers for ED, smugglers for ED, they are all meant to keep this ZANU-PF in power. And we need to end the ZANU-PF dictatorial powers to make sure we've got free, fair, and credible elections if we are ever to get out of this hellhole. That is the truth. Think about it. Thank you very much, those who were able to join. We'll be having another regular one, the 7 o'clock UK time and 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time on the same platform. So I hope you'll be able to join us then. Have a good night.